In this video, we're going to talk about managing your color palettes inside of ZBrush. Now, in our poly painting chapters, we have talked about this color picker here on the side of the screen where we can select any color and we can store two different colors, a secondary swatch and a primary swatch. And we can switch between them using this button or the V hotkey. Now, this doesn't give us an enormous amount of flexibility when it comes to storing color variation or sampling color. We can click from this swatch and drag over to our painted object and sample any color from our texture that we're already painting. We can also press the Alt key while we do that and alternate between the unshaded pixel, that is the pixel as it would appear with the flat color material, and the shaded pixel. So pressing and letting go of the Alt key will alternate between those two selection modes. Now, if we go to the color menu, we do have a sub-menu here called modifiers. If you expand that, it will give you a variety of other color picker options. You might find some of these to be preferential, and you can click and drag these out into the interface wherever you want using the techniques that we talk about in interface customization. But again, this doesn't allow us to store a color palette to paint across multiple sessions. So what should we do? In this case, we're going to use a plugin. It's found in the plugin menu called Zcolor. So if we tear this off, it's the last menu in the Z plugin menu. It's called Zcolor here. Now, this is one of the few ZBrush plugins that actually opens in a separate window. So for me, it's going to open on another monitor. To pull it over onto the single monitor, I'll have to actually reduce ZBrush to reduce it from maximized full screen. Now when I press this button, it will load up Zcolor and I can float this menu on top of the screen. Now, for you personally, you'd be able to have it on a secondary monitor if you have a second monitor, but I wanted to be able to record this so you could see what I was actually selecting. So this is what Zcolor will probably look like to you when you first open it. We will have two swatches here. We have a direct mode, which can be turned on or off, set color, which will set the main ZBrush color, and we have a fill object option here as well. We have the ability to filter our color selection. That is this list here, which you'll see begins to grow quite long as we add colors to it. Now you can click from this swatch and drag anywhere inside of ZBrush or even outside of ZBrush to select a pixel to set this color. Or you can expand this menu here and we can set a color directly. So let's say, for example, I selected just a primary red. So this has set this color now. And you'll notice also I have these sliders where I can alter it. So I could change the saturation, I could dial that back, I could change the value. I could also directly affect the R, G, and B values here, and it also gives us the hex value for that particular color. Now, next we have a selection of swatches here. These are actually color harmonies. We have analogous, we have shades, we have monochromatic, complementary, triadic, and split complementary, and we'll talk a bit more about these in a moment. You can lock this. If I don't lock it and then I change my color selection, these will update. But if I lock this, it will not update as I change my color selections. And these can be really, really valuable for establishing a good color harmony to start your painting with. One of the most difficult things about painting is deciding what colors to choose and when to put them down. And this can help simplify that because it allows you to create a color harmony based on the color wheel. We will revisit this though. Once we have a color selected here, let's go ahead and close out of this menu. I have the ability to turn on direct mode. I have the ability to set color. So if I set my main ZBrush color, you see that changes my color in ZBrush. Then if I click this button here, that will allow me to fill the object with colors. Let's make sure that we have our body selected. Make sure that we don't have a texture map turned on, that we are just on RGB. And then if I set color, it's going to fill the object with that color. I can, of course, undo that with Control-Z and then turn off fill mode. If I press set color now, it's only going to change the color that's currently selected inside of ZBrush. So if I change my color selection, let's say I bring this over here, set color, it's just going to change my color selection. Now, if I want to add swatches up here, perhaps I like this particular color, what I will do is I will right-click on it and say Add to Swatches, and now I have added that to a swatch. If I adjust it, let's say select a different color here, let's go to the reds, right-click on that, add to swatches. Now I have two different swatches available to me. We'll go over to this one. Let's change this one to green. Add to swatches. There we go. So now we've got a red and a green here. Now, if I turn off direct mode here and then change my color selection, you see that I can compare it to my previous selection. If I turn this back on, it's going to update both of those swatches at the same time. So it's very valuable to have this turned off. So if I decide to make a variant of this color, maybe I'll bring down the saturation and the value a little bit. I can see the difference between those two. And if I like that, I can right-click and add to swatches. Now let's take a look at one of the very unique things about Zcolor. This will allow us, if we go to File, Save As, to save this swatch or this set of swatches as a palette. So if I go to Open, I don't want to save these particular swatches, so I'll say no. And what I'm going to do is I am going to open up my swatches that I have saved specifically for this creature. So here you see I have a selection of files. This one's called hellhoundpalette.zco. That is a Zcolor palette. So if I open that, you see now I've got this color palette, which is what I use to paint this creature. And you see that some of these have names associated with them. For example, CO1, CO2, right here. We also have Cool Moray Eel. That was sampled from an image of a moray eel. Now, I can select these colors and it will immediately update the color that I have selected here. If I turn on this option here, it's going to update immediately inside of ZBrush what my selected color is. So having that turned on allows me to just select my colors from this selection of swatches, and my paintbrush will update to that particular color to start painting. If I turn this off and then move between colors, that allows me that opportunity to compare and contrast between my currently selected color and the one that I will potentially be using. If I click Set Color, that sets my color as my selected color in ZBrush. So I find as I'm trying to establish a palette, it's nice to turn this off, and then I can just pick and choose and then set color. And then when I'm really in the zone, then I will turn this on and I can go ahead and directly select color from here and start painting. And I don't have to worry about any extra button presses to get the colors that I want. If I want to filter my selections, I can press MO in the filter and that will show me just moray eel. If I clear my filters, then you can see I see all of my colors again. Also notice as I select these colors, let's say I like this particular red. Maybe I want to use these for markings on the skin. I come down here and all of my color harmonies update. So if I like a particular color harmony, say I look at this one and say, oh, hey, you know what? I really do like this particular complementary color harmony. I'll right-click on that and add that row to swatches. So now I've got complementary 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Here you see I did another complementary earlier. That's complementary 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If I particularly like the split complementary or triadic, I believe that is triadic there, add row to swatches. Here I have triadic 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If I want to save my updated palette, I'll simply go to File, Save As, and that will save it as an updated palette. Now I have other palettes in here. I've got a palette here that was generated from an image of a mummy. So let's say I wanted to append a palette into this existing one. I could go to File, Append, and then I could append a new palette in. And here you see I've got Mummy Detail 2. And this is a selection of swatches that were generated from an image of a mummy. So I can keep building up my color palettes, and Zcolor will keep it organized and named in a way that makes it easy to work with inside of ZBrush. So if I have my standard brush selected, we'll set the brush up as we do in our poly painting chapter with a spray stroke, turn color down to 0, change our alpha to alpha 7 so we get that nice broken up pattern, and then I will just zero in on an area here. Let's zero in on the leg so we can really see what we're painting here. Make sure that we're at our highest subdivision level because poly painting is going to be dependent on the underlying resolution. Turn on RGB and turn off Z-Add. Make sure A is turned on the brush so we're painting with an alpha. If your alpha isn't apparent, then you probably have the A turned off. So now let's say I want to select this color here. I have direct select turned on, so it's going to immediately grab that color. Maybe I'll go to this lighter sand color and I can paint that on top. Maybe we'll turn down our RGB intensity, and maybe I want to go in with a little bit of blue. You see how very, very easy it is now to establish our color harmonies and then work with those. Maybe I want to warm this area up, so I'll grab this sort of burgundy hue, and I can start painting that in this area. Whenever you're painting, it can be beneficial, I find, to go to your material modifiers and just turn your specular down and then expand that specular curve, especially for creature skin. I think it really helps you see what you're painting. There we go. Maybe we want to go back to a lighter hue. We'll grab this one closer to the base skin tone, and we can paint that over the top. So this is one of the most valuable Z plugins for me personally in my workflow, because I do an awful lot of creature painting, and being able to establish a color palette and access it between ZBrush sessions, even between characters. If I've got something that works particularly well, I might like to revisit that for another character and then adjust it slightly for whatever my needs happen to be. We can go in with this blue. We'll turn down our RGB intensity, turn down our brush size, and then we can sort of spray some blue down in those recesses a little bit. Go back to our base skin tone, and maybe we'll change to a drag rectangle stroke and the vein alpha. You'll recognize all of this if you've watched the chapter on poly painting. We can do some mottling of the base skin tone back on top of that just to break that all up. So I mentioned earlier that some of these palettes I extracted from images. Well, I'd like to show you how to do that, because Zcolor also allows us to import palettes that we create using a website called color.adobe.com, which is super helpful. So I'm going to open up a browser and we'll take a look at that now. So here we are on the website color.adobe.com. Now, if you don't have a membership on this site, I highly recommend creating one. It's free and it's an enormous and wonderful tool set. At the top of the screen, you see we have color wheel, extract theme, extract gradient, and then accessibility tools. We're going to start with the color wheel. You'll recognize these color harmonies from Zcolor. For example, analogous. This will help you visualize and understand what an analogous color harmony is. You see, an analogous color harmony is based on one side of the color wheel with a key color here. As we move in, we can change the tint. We can either add white or remove it so it becomes lighter. We can move it around, and that's going to change the color harmony. As I move the key color, it's going to change where on the color wheel the analogous color scheme is centered. Monochromatic, now you can see it changes. This gives us tints and shades. Tints and shades. Tints are adding white, shades are adding black. So here you see with a monochromatic color scheme, mono for one, chromatic for color. This is a single color with tints and shades. It gives us the hex value for each one, and it gives us the RGB. The triadic color harmony is a triad. It is a triangle on the color wheel. So you can see here that we've got our key color, and then if we overlay a triangle, we have two other color selections here, and we can adjust our tints and our shades using these sliders. Complementary is the key color, and then it's complement, which is the color on the opposite side of the color wheel. So if we grab green, we have this violet over here. Split complementary is the key color and then a split on either side of the complementary color. And then we have double split, complementary, square, and compound. These are not supported in the color swatches inside of Zcolor. They're not quite as common as the others. I think it's most important just to understand the analogous, monochromatic, triadic, complementary, and split complementary. And by experimenting with this color wheel, it will make it very clear what these are. And the reason for these, they are color harmonies that are shown in color theory to be harmonious or to work together. So it's a wonderful starting point from which you can generate a color palette to use on everything from costumes, characters, creatures, anything that you want to paint. So if I wanted to save this, I could just click Save. If I have published a color turned on, it'll publish it to a public profile. I turn that off generally, and I'm going to save it to Maddie, and it'll be my color theme, and I just click Save, and that is now saved to my color themes. Now, let's say I wanted to extract an image or extract a theme from an image. I go to Extract Theme, and I have the option here to extract a color from an image and save it as a color palette. So what I will do now is I'm going to bring up an image that I particularly like. In this case, I am going to bring up an illustration that's one of my absolute favorites. What I'll need to do is actually reduce this window so you can see it on screen. I'm going to bring up a painting by William Stout, one of my favorite illustrators. He was art director and production designer that worked on some fantastic movies, great concept artist, and incredible paleo artist. And this is my favorite marine reptile. It's the mosasaur. And this painting has just, it's been a favorite of mine since I was little. I love the palette that he used in this painting. So what I will do is I will take the original painting image file right here, and I'm going to drag and drop it right there into the window. Now you can see Adobe Color is sampling what it thinks are the biggest color differentials within this image and then creating a color palette from that. Now I can click and drag these and move them around to change my selections, and then I can name it. So I'll name this William Stout, and I can tag it with any particular tags that I want, and then I can click Save. And what this does is it saves it into my libraries. So if we go to the top of the screen here, I can go to My Libraries, and that will open up my personal libraries that are attached to my membership on this site. So here you see Maddie. We open that up, and there's William Stout color theme. There's the color theme that I just created, my color theme. I have one created from an image of gums on a dog, another image from a dog's mouth. I've got an eel color palette that was extracted from an image of an eel. Here you see I did another version of that mosasaur, this time brighter. Here I've got abstract shapes from bones, old bones. I even created a gradient based on that William Stout image, so I quite like that particular color palette. There's a download option here, so if I click this, I can download as ASC, download as a JPEG, I can download as or copy as XML, CSS. What I want to do is I want to save this. I'm going to download this as an ASC. That's an Adobe file. So I download that, and that goes into my downloads folder. Now, we'll go back up to our color swatches here. Basically, any image that you want to extract a color palette from, you can do so here. It will not save the image with the palette, so you might want to name it descriptively or hang on to the image, but it will save the palette for you. Now, if we go back to Zcolor, I'll show you how we can take this color palette that we just downloaded the swatches for and then load that into Zcolor. Now, back in ZBrush, we'll open Zcolor again, and what I want to do is clear the palettes that we have here. So I'll go to File, New. I don't want to save those. Now I'm going to go to File, Open, or excuse me, File, Import. We want to use Import for the Adobe files. Open will open Zcolor files. Import will import files that we export from the Adobe Color website. And incidentally, those color swatches you can also import into Photoshop and use those as palettes in Photoshop as well. You can also export palettes from Photoshop. So I'll go to Import, and then I just want to download that particular image. So here you see I've got William Stout Mosasaur ASE. If I open that up, there are my color swatches that I just extracted. If I select one of these, for example, the purple hue, come down here, I've got all those different color swatches again. Remember that we talked about these harmonies. There's my analogous. That's all on one side of the color wheel. There are my shades. That's just adding dark to the color. My tints are monochromatic, which adds white. Then we've got the complementary, split or triadic, and then split complementary. And I can lock that if I don't want to change those. And now as I select these colors, it will update my color selection inside of ZBrush. So this is incredibly helpful when you want to paint. Needless to say, you're going to have much more flexibility, much more effectiveness as a painter if you're able to know what color you're selecting and you can consistently go back to the same colors. And there's only so much ability that you have to do that without this type of tool set. So this is a wonderful addition to ZBrush. It's super helpful, and it's a staple of my personal workflow. So I hope you found this video helpful, and this can show you new ways that you can explore color and use color in your own work as a painter and designer. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next lesson.